Hello everybody, what's up? It's 2024, can you believe it? It seems like we just started 2023, but welcome everybody. This is Macro Talk. It's Tuesday evening, 8 o'clock? Something like that, the 2nd of January. And we are in the beginning part of our month of macro video. I'm very excited to say. I just noticed that Layowa was in the house. I presume that Layowa means Michelle or Jimmy. Welcome, whichever of you is here. So glad you made it. We're going to be talking a lot about a piece of your equipment this evening, actually. A very fine piece of equipment that I have had so much fun getting used to. You're going to see a lot of this thing over the next few weeks. What a great lens, and what a great camera. And tonight we're going to be talking about a couple of things related to general use of this lens and this camera. We're going to be talking about tripods and how to control the camera down low to the ground, which is mostly where we are when we're doing video. I'm going to be talking a little bit about equipment, but then we're going to get into a discussion of what quality is when we're talking about macro video. How do we even determine quality? What are we looking for? Basically, this is going to be everything you need to know to win the competition in January, which is video, right? You know that. You have to turn in a clip. I'm also going to go over the rules for the competition, and I think I'll do that now while it's on the top of my mind, because this is a departure from usual. I'm going to make it easy and less stressful for everybody. So what we're going to do for the competition in January is you only get to turn in one clip. One clip. It has to be macro. It has to be video. In fact, I think what I'll do is I'll go to my notes to make sure I don't miss any. It should be between 10 and 60 seconds in length. That is not like Titanic was longer than that. I'll have to check with Mike, but I think it was like 2 hours or 4 hours, something like that. You only have 1 minute. And in that minute, what you're going to do is put together a clip. And I will tell you, when we're talking about quality, all the things that I'll be looking for to determine whether or not it's a good clip. And that's how you'll win, is by doing a good clip. Now, you don't need fancy equipment. You're going to want this lens, but you might not have one yet. But you don't absolutely need that. If you've got a macro lens and a camera, you can do this. If you've got a cell phone, you can do this, and that's fine too. But what we'll do is we're going to limit the size of the file, so I don't want any fancy stuff sent in. Well, let me just go through the list. It's one video clip per person. It should be between 10 and 60 seconds in length. It has to be shot at a macro magnification, and we'll go with the liberal one of 1:4 or closer. Okay, this is a 2x lens, so it's not hard to get close. It really isn't. And you can have sound or not. That's up to you. But sound tends to make videos more interesting. You can have music. You can have your voice. You can have other noises, insect noises. You can do whatever you want with that. But if you do sound, make sure it sounds good, because sound will kill a video. A good video will not attract a lot of attention if the sound is bad. By the way, can you hear me? Probably should have asked that first. Let me see. No word yet, but I'm presuming you can hear me. My little line's jumping up and down. It may be a tad on the hot side here. Let's see if that's any better. Okay, so sound, it's important. And I think that's just about everything. The clip must adhere to the YouTube community guidelines, okay? So you can't like amputate a body part or do something like that to get attention, because I'll get in trouble and they won't let me show it. So just be very mindful of the fact that the community guidelines are pretty strict on what you can do. We don't use bad language on this channel just because I don't I love to use bad language and I swear all the time myself, but not publicly. So we just keep that to ourselves. And that needs to be the same in this. So a sweary video would not be a good one. Okay? Yeah, I think that's about it. It doesn't have to be shot for the competition. Somebody asked this a few weeks ago. If you have been shooting video and you've got a nice clip or a couple of clips you want to put together into your 60-second piece, that's fine. But try to keep it in the spirit of what we're doing here. It's bear in mind that there's a lot of people, this will be the first time they've done it, and so I'll be judging that accordingly. So yeah, that's what we're going to do for the video. It can be anything you can dream up, but it really to win. Well, let me tell you what the winning video is going to be like. It's going to have some kind of a cohesive story to it. It doesn't have to be a complete story, and we don't have to know what the story is. We just have to recognize that this is part of a story. Maybe it will trigger some kind of an emotional reaction in the viewer. Maybe they'll laugh, maybe they'll cry, maybe they'll do all kinds of things. If your video can do that, it's already successful. So having something, it doesn't have to have a narrative per se, just that we recognize it's part of a bigger story, and that'll do the trick. Because this is just a clip, remember. And obviously it needs to show off your technical ability to do this, because you're going to practice before you do it, right? And you're going to be focusing your camera and probably changing the aperture and doing stuff like that. So all that will be important that you do it well. I think that's about it. That's really enough to get you there. And I'm going to be helping you, because this whole month I'm going to be telling you what you need to do in order to tick all those boxes. So this is very much an educational month. At the end of this month, I want everybody who's remotely interested to at least know what shooting video with your modern camera is all about. I think we all do it for some reason. I mean, I do it all the time obviously to make videos for you guys, but that's different. We're talking about photographing the subjects that we're interested in at macro scale with a video camera. And let me tell you, it is difficult. Things that you do naturally with the camera now, you're probably not going to do naturally with video. And I was going to show you some clips tonight, and I got some very good clips, I think, but I haven't had a chance to edit them. Why? Oh, I'm glad you asked. Because of the competition. And why the competition? I'm always lickety-split with that. I have been working for 48 hours on that competition. It's by far the best one we've ever had. I had about 100 photographs, and about 92 of them should be finalists. So it has been incredibly difficult, and I have been doing it since sunrise yesterday. And I'm not finished. I am not anywhere near finished. Well, I'm getting closer. I've got a pool of finalists, a small pool now. So we're getting towards the end, and I will record a video of the results later on. But anyway, finishing up with the video competition, your file needs to be smaller than a gigabyte. Do you know what that is? Do you know how much a gigabyte is? Well, I'll tell you, just so as you know. If you were to shoot using raw footage, so you're shooting a video with TIFFs as the individual frames, then if you shoot at 1080p and 8-bit RGB, which is the color, and you would choose all of this, and you didn't compress it, then what you'd end up with is about 8,000 megabytes. No, I'm sorry, about 8,000 bytes. So 8.5 megabytes, something like that. You just need to keep it under 1 gigabyte, and you can do 5 gigabytes in 1 minute with your cell phone. So just be mindful of what you're doing. check. We'll talk about this some more, but check. I had a math example I was going to go through with you, but looking at it, I just think, no, that will lose all the viewers right there. Just don't shoot in 4K. Shoot in 1080p is fine, and if you just do that and keep it under a minute, you'll be okay. All right, okay. Now, that should be a good segue into tonight's topic, but there's a couple of other very brief announcements I need to make. The competition results, please don't ask me when they'll be out. They'll be out as soon as I can possibly get them to you. And you are going to be blown away by these images. I know a lot of you have already seen them, but my goodness, there are some real crackers here. And I want to welcome some new people, some new Patreon subscribers that have shown up in the last week. Anthony Horobin, Thomas Dyke, Victor Moltnan, Jeff Malone, Kim Pilegard, Mike Gorman, Mark Gorman that is, Rich, Andre, Bohax Gergo, Bill Feigenbaum. Bill, you know you were already a member. You don't have to join again, but thank you. We'll count you twice. Michelle Moi, yeah, that's it. That's in 1 week. And some of those folks joined the low-calorie version of Patreon, where you don't pay anything, which is fine, and I'm glad you're here. But if you were to feel super generous and wanted to actually join and contribute to the needs of the channel, that would be great. And you could even get your way into the very high ranks of the mega donors. So you'd be alongside people like Bill and Susan and Mike, Robert, Patrick, Jan, Jamie, Jim, Harold, Graham. Yeah, all of these people. And you want to be in their number. Captain Glenn, Dennis, Daniel. You never write, you never call, Daniel. You know that. And Bud, Andy, Amy, and Allison. Did I forget anybody? I don't think so. These are the superstars, and you can be one of them just by shelling over some bucks so I can pay the bills. That's it. That's all you got to do. All right, enough of that. Let me see if there's any important messages I need to address or answer. I'm so glad that Leo dropped by. We talk about this company a lot. And the reason is because this company is doing something for macro photography that nobody else is. They're bringing the kind of optics that we used to just read about the rich folks having, and they're bringing them to us so that we can use them. Things like cine lenses and wide-angle macro lenses and high magnification lenses and all kinds of things that were esoteric 10 years ago. But because of Mr. Lee and this amazing company, Venus Optics, they brought this stuff to where we can use it and own it and actually make art with it. And this cine lens, I don't know what I was expecting. I mean, all of the video I've ever done before has been with a macro lens, and it's been horrible. It's horribly difficult. This is a lens that's designed to make it not exactly easy, but easier. It's a very intuitive feel to the lens. If you've never used a cine lens of any kind, and I hadn't, it's just a wonderful it's a wonderful feeling to be able to control the light and the depth of field and the focus all in a very fluid way while you're shooting. It takes getting used to, and we'll talk a lot more about that. The lens itself is a work of art. I'll show it to you again before we actually start talking about it, but it is such a beautiful piece of equipment. There, even the lens cap is so professional, slides on and off, beautiful thing. Would you look at that? Gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. As I said, we'll get to that in just a little bit, and we'll talk about some of the things that make it so special. But it is definitely one of the nicest surprises I've had in photography in a long time. It makes a difference. Okay, so what we're talking about tonight, we're going to start out talking about the whole tripod stable mount system. Whatever it is you're going to use, I'm going to show you there are options that don't include a $1,000 tripod. There are other things that you can do that will work just as well, but you have to have something. You absolutely have to have something. Unless you have some kind of a steady cam rig that you strap onto yourself, which I would love to see if you do. That would be very entertaining. But unless you have some expensive gimbal or other piece of equipment, you're going to be trying to stabilize a camera that doesn't want to be stabilized. And at macro levels of magnification, it doesn't matter what you do. You breathe, you take a step, your camera is going to shake, and it's going to be very difficult to watch if that happens. So we have to have a way to secure the camera in such a way that not only is it stable and secure and not shaking, but we can also move it and use the camera without that causing the vibrations that are so off-putting. So you don't need just any old tripod. And if you read the article I wrote on Patreon yesterday, I suggest you could use any old cheap tripod. That was a joke. You can't get away with using junk for this. What I did was I was talking to Susan. We were doing some training this weekend, and she mentioned to me that she had a nice fluid head. A fluid head is a tripod head that gives you 1 or 2 or sometimes even 3 degrees of freedom, 3 axes in which you can move the camera in a fluid way. It isn't made of fluid. It's not a liquid tripod. That would not make any sense at all. So these things allow you to make smooth, controlled movements that don't look jerky in the footage. Now, the fluid head that Susan was showing me was a Manfrotto, Bogen Manfrotto from years ago, and it looked awfully familiar to me. And I went and grabbed this piece of hardware that I had picked up at a thrift shop a few years ago now, and I've used it just as a static clamp to put cameras on and then bolt it to a shelf or something so I can have an extra camera. But I discovered it was exactly the same thing Susan had, and I spent a couple of hours in the workshop with it, removing the big heavy base that was on it, and I ended up with a 2-axis fluid head that is absolutely fantastic. And I'm going to show it to you because this is exactly the kind of thing that we're going to be talking about. Now, I'll have to speak up because I didn't add a second microphone tonight, but let me show you what I'm talking about. We'll talk about the tripod head first, and then we'll get into the rest of the mounting system. So all this is a 2-axis device that has a pan and a tilt on it. And by loosening the nuts just a little bit, it allows me to turn the camera 360 degrees while also moving it down and up. And I've got everything secured on a single rail so that it keeps the torque between the lens and the camera stable. And this just is a very solid, this is my old studio tripod. It's made of solid steel or something, and it weighs a ton. Not something I like carrying out in the woods, but it's definitely what I would take for video. So this allows me to focus in real time while changing the aperture, if need be, in real time with this back ring declipped. You can see the aperture adjusting right there in real time, all the way from T 2.9 up to T22, and of course your focus. Now, one of the things you'll learn in shooting macro video is that when you're making a cut, a transition from looking at one thing to looking at something else, by the time you get to your something else, by the time you get to your next subject, you want that lens to be focused. So something that you probably have never done in still photography but will quickly become a habit in video is you'll practice that move. You'll practice that move from A to B, and you'll get a feel for the focus ring, so that as you're moving between the two areas at whatever pace you're doing it, you will be changing the focus so that when you arrive, you're focused, you're pre-focused. This takes practice and coordination, and it's very satisfying when you hit it right. And it's one of the ways that you'll tell that somebody's been practicing this, is the ability to make fairly complex moves, but always anticipate where you're going to be focused when you get there. Now, you just can't do that properly unless you have, like I say, very specialized equipment without a tripod, and preferably a tripod with a fluid head. You can do it with a ball head, especially a ball head like the Novaflex, the Magic Ball. That you can partially loosen and then get all kinds of freedom of movement. And I could imagine that would be fairly straightforward to use. But a regular ball head would be difficult. You'd need a fairly big, substantial, like the 45 RSS type, RRS, I should say, tripod ball head. Something that's going to give you enough resistance that you're not dashing all over the place with the camera angle. But you'll figure that out. Now, as far as the tripod goes, I would recommend using a tripod that allows you to get down very close to the ground, obviously, whether that is by splaying out the legs, or if you don't have a tripod that will get super low natively, then something that you can maybe reverse the center pole on and have the camera suspended from the legs. That'll get you low. That's what Robert Thompson does quite a bit. He likes to tent the tripod and then suspend the camera. Many tripods also have an arm, and I have one of those horizontal arms. I just don't like it very much. Having one of those oftentimes will let you get close to the ground and give you lateral movement as well. Probably more people these days than ever in the past that I was aware of are using these ground pods, or platypods. That's one of the brands. It's just a big chunk of aluminum with holes drilled in it. I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean, it's a very handy piece of equipment, and you can mount your camera directly on it. Now, depending on the hardware you have between the base and the camera will determine how much freedom of movement you have. Personally, I would rather be a little bit higher off the ground with the axes of freedom you're going to get from something like this. Gimbals are another possibility. I have a gimbal. It's a tripod mounted gimbal that I use for bird photography when I'm just out playing, and it's very nice. I would not want to rely on that for this. It's maybe I'm just not practiced enough with it, but it is not nearly as smooth as this fluid head. You don't have to spend a fortune, and you can probably get away with what you have. The one thing you can't use, which is counterintuitive to me, I bought a 3-axis geared tripod head years ago, and I use it for almost everything. I love it. That thing is worse than useless for video. So forget about it. If you think you're going to use a 3-way geared head, that does not work. You can't use the gears because your wrist doesn't turn 360 degrees, so you have to move it and stop and move it and stop, and it's just awful. And you can disengage the gear and do it manually, in which case you'd be better off just taking the camera off the tripod. So it's difficult. I would go with something more specifically for video, and get something that will take the weight of your camera. I placed an order today. Actually, I placed it and then unplaced it after thinking about it. I had buyer's remorse too bad. But I need to get a monitor. That is something I have always resisted doing, but for video, it's really necessary. Having a bright, high-knit IPS type monitor. You don't have to have a recording monitor, the things that cost $1,000. You can just get a good screen that gives you twice the size of the back of your camera screen and allows you to do a lot of things like zoom in and get a close look at what you're shooting, make sure you're in focus. That, I think, is going to be pretty mandatory for me. I mean, doing it without that is a challenge. I find myself with my face up against the back of the camera, which is not a good place to have it. If you're going to get some kind of a screen, and there are many made by companies like Neewer makes one, Feel World, strange name for a company, but they have a whole line of these things. In fact, my friend Chris uses Feel World monitors, as well as Atomus ones, which are the expensive ones. But if you want just a cheap one, they sell them for under $100. You can get some for $50. And I'm also going to get a cage for the camera so that I can have mount points for lights and things. That you need light. And we'll talk about light a lot, because like in every other kind of photography, the lighting is everything. I think there's a question, so I might just pause off topic. Has anyone ever compared a Lume Cube Mini to a small rig RM75 or 120 for lighting outdoors? Yes, I have, and it's not off topic. It's very much on topic. I am a huge fan of the RM75. So much so, I have one in my hand, spontaneously as we speak. I have a Lume Cube as well, but I don't know where, well, I do know where it is. It's right in front of me, but I'm not going to pick it up because I don't like it. I don't like it for outside because you can get it pretty bright, but it has a single point light source right in the middle of it, and the thing is hard to diffuse. The diffusion gizmo that goes on the end of it is worthless. It doesn't do anything. It cuts the light down a bit, but it doesn't really diffuse it. I would definitely go with this or the 120 that Small Rig makes. They're cheaper than the Lume Cube, and I just think they're better. If you really want the square form factor, look at the Ulanzi ones. They're a lot less expensive, and I know that Allan uses them to photograph slime molds. And her photographs, as you know, win prizes. So yeah, that's a good option. Whatever it is, you need to diffuse it with a little bit of mylar or whatever you're using to wrap around the front of it. But yeah, that's what I would say. Either one of those options, and there are plenty now out there. Just make sure you're getting one that uses RBGWW LEDs. A good quality LED. If you want the color version, you don't really even need it. But if you want to control the color, anyway, it's a no-brainer in my opinion. That's been my experience. Is the fluid head you're showing a Manfrotto 3130? I don't know. How would I find that out? I could read the label. In fact, the label came off while I was working on it, and I had to glue it back on, so I know it's got one. It's a 3126, a Bogan Manfrotto, and it's ancient. It's as old as I am, probably, it's just a solid piece of gear. I know that this is in the same line that Manfrotto uses for their camera stands in the studio. Somebody who uses those stands, those rolling stands, is gosh, I forget his name. Carl Taylor, wonderful product photographer and a great macro photographer in his own right. He uses those things in the studio, and they are just workhorses. Beautiful. This is like a mini version of something like that. So yeah, it's old, and if you ever find one. I don't think they even make them anymore, but if you ever find one, buy it. You'll be glad you did. All right, so we answered the questions, yes, and that's good. And we have you are actually hearing me speak, which is also good, because that would be embarrassing to find out there was no sound now. So the tripod options. There are other things that don't involve really buying anything. If you know how to sew, and you can find some bean material in your house. Now, this is not cans of baked beans, for example. If you just used the whole cans, it would be lumpy and you wouldn't want to rest your camera on it. And if you emptied the cans out, it would be wet and they would smell bad. Yeah, so dried beans. And make sure they're not the kind that sprout, because I made a bean bag a few years ago that turned into a chia pet, sort of, only nastier than that. I have one now that has sterile seeds in it because they're made of plastic. And this bag is fairly large. Whenever I go out to shoot video, especially in the old days before I had a lens, I take that bag with me and I just throw it on the ground where I'm working, and it will support the camera, the lens, the lights, everything, and it'll hold them really steady. But it is a very specialized use case. You have to be shooting something that's right in front of your beanbag. And let me tell you, that beanbag solution is not good for ants. If you're photographing large ants in an ant nest, yeah, they just don't. They go crazy with the beanbag for some reason, and they get all over you. Yeah, I don't recommend that at all. So you probably want to be off the ground for ants. But we're going to talk about specific insects at the end of this. Let me see if there's anything I forgot from my notes that I didn't cover about the tripod situation. Low-level articulating arms we talked about. If you've got one that does that, great, use it. We didn't talk about mini tripods. There are a bunch of them out there, and honestly, most of them are rubbish. They're too flimsy, they don't hold the camera very well, and they fall over and the legs bend and everything. Now, Novaflex makes one that looks strange, long spindly legs with balls on the end, but my friend Robert absolutely swears by it. He says it's a cracker of a tripod. And he should know. He uses it every day. So that is certainly one to consider. This morning, I went on that large outlet that begins with A and was looking at various different tripods. And I noticed that some of the companies like Sirui, is that how you pronounce it? And Leo Photo and a few others have really come out with some very, very nice looking, solid, milled aluminum tripod solutions for low to the ground. I mean, some of those look really good and maybe worth giving a try at some point. So there are those. You can spend more than I spent on my big tripod on little tripods if you want. Some of them are pretty expensive. Sliders. Now, that is something that certainly if we were planning on doing larger scale video, which you may already do, having some kind of a slider, be that a dolly type affair where your camera moves forward and backward on wheels or side to side, or the type of sliders that you can make on a little rail that you can even motorize, all of those are handy. And they add an element of interest to the video when the perspective is moving, especially if you're following an insect. But it greatly complicates the setup and the cost. They're not cheap. I am making one, which doesn't mean much because I've been making it for many years, and I'm never much closer to getting it finished. I come up with all these other ideas for it. But it's long and it's based on a couple of copper tubes, and it's got wheels, and you just manually move the camera on it, and it works great. But it's such a pain. I hardly ever take it out, and it weighs a ton. So yeah, that's a possibility though. These are also something that you can buy and mount on a tripod. You can get a side-to-side slider that's just big enough to go on the head of a heavy tripod, and you can move your camera that way. Which anything that you can do to give you freedom and to give you a shifting perspective while you're changing focus and aperture and what have you will add dynamism to the production, and that's a good thing. Well, it's a good thing unless everybody gets seasick watching it. If you've got a gimbal a stabilizer. I have one, but it's only for an iPhone, or a GoPro actually, and boy, it's nice. It's very nice. And I have the little gimbal as well, the small DJI, which is fantastic. The Osmo Pocket, which is great for doing video. It's not a macro video camera. You can't get as close to your subjects as I want, and this happens every time I'm out there with it shooting grown-up video, meaning shooting video of myself, a grown-up. When I see a butterfly or something interesting and I use the DJI, it won't get me close enough, and I can't blow the thing up enough to really get a good look at what I was seeing. This is what that is replacing for the macro video, something with reach, and this has reach. 100mm lens, which is standard for a macro lens. This lens is in very many ways similar, maybe more than just similar, but may even have much the same optical formula as their 100mm 2 times magnification macro lens, their flagship macro lens. It feels a lot like that. I used that last summer. I borrowed it from Captain Glenn for a couple of weeks, and it's a lovely lens. Heavy, solid, manual macro lens. This feels like a similar lens. If that is the case, it's really top notch. Where was I? We're talking about ground level dollies and skater dollies and things like that. I don't know anything about those. I know that I wouldn't take anything with wheels out to the kind of place I go to shoot macro, because the wheels wouldn't turn. They'd just sink into the mud. It's a swamp. So yeah, probably not for me. DIY solutions, bean bags, sandbags, all of those help to stabilize, and you need them. Now, remote control, a wireless remote control, is an interesting way, especially if you invest a little bit and put a follow focus device on your camera that you can control remotely. Now, I would love to do that. And then I could use my Insects in Flight rig and tell Jan I shot all the pictures with that. But it would be a great way, I think, to capture interesting video, to set up your lens and your camera next to a flower bed, say, and then stand back while the bees get all worked up, and use the remote follow focus to move the camera, pan and tilt the camera, as well as zoom, as well as shift focus as your subjects come in and out of the scene. That is a great idea, in fact. I might look into that and see who's in that line of business. I know that some of the companies that make the follow focus devices, like Neewer makes a very affordable one, also have a remote version of it. And I bet Chris could whip one up in no time flat, because I know he uses them on his robots. Yeah, that's worth thinking about. And handheld stabilizers would be the last thing that they're so expensive. The big, heavy gimbals that would carry a rig like this. By the way, I've been talking about this lens. I'll show it again because it's so pretty. I've been talking about this 100mm cine lens like it's the heaviest lens I've ever used, and you'll never encounter anything this heavy in the video world. Let me tell you, Laowa has some anamorphic real cine lenses for big for big cameras. They're actually small censored cameras, but they're the real things that they make movies with, like the Proteus line. Those things are incredible, and you talk about a big heavy lens. I think some of those lenses cost upward of $20,000. That's money for a lens. Anyway, so this, by comparison, this is a very compact solution, but it really isn't for us macro photographers. It weighs more than a regular macro lens because of everything it's got in it. I've explained this before, but it consists of a 100mm macro lens, of course, that internally focuses, and you have an aperture control. We talk about aperture as a number that reflects the amount of light that gets to the sensor. It's a T number. Instead of giving an F number to describe the relative size of the hole in the lens itself, we talk about the ability for the light to get back to the sensor. T 2.9 is a pretty fast lens, and it shuts down all the way to T22, though you probably wouldn't want to be using it quite that shut down. It blocks out a lot of the light. The other wheel that also has a big toothed grip on it is the focus wheel, and you'll notice that the distances are clearly marked in foreign and domestic units. So you've got your millimeters as well as your feet and inches. This is important because as you're getting used to it, you may want to look at the barrel of the lens to see if you're moving in the right direction and if you're getting close to where you need to be in focus. It's a handy reference, and if you're going to use it, you need to be able to see the numbers, and you can see them very clearly. You can probably actually see the numbers from where you are right now without me moving the camera any closer. Let me see if I can get the glare off it. Yeah, I can read them there, but of course I knew what they said. So right now we're just a bit above T5.6, and we're focused at 74. Is that what it says? 74... No, 1 foot 4 inches. See? Okay, all right. I need my glasses on. Oh, I'm wearing my glasses. Okay, so that point was well made. It's good to have it when you're holding the camera and standing over it. Of course, you can actually see the distances. So you need a tripod. You need some stable way to keep this lens and camera. And if you're thinking, I'm not worried, I've got in-body stabilization that will take care of all of that. No, you don't. It won't take care of any of that, and neither will warp stabilizer or any of the other things you might want to do in post. You need to start with vibration-free footage, and then you can do all the other effects that you want to do after that. But if you're trying to get rid of shake in post, it's not going to work. It's not going to be successful. So what is a high quality video? What does a good video clip look like? What are the characteristics that make a winning video clip? There are several. For one thing, you need to shoot video in high enough resolution that you're fulfilling the first law of macro photography, which is showing people things they can't see with their own eyes. That's what macro is all about. It's about getting close enough to see things that are fascinating and beautiful, but we can't see them unaided. That's what we mean by macro. The resolution has to be such that when we're at those magnifications, we can make out detail. And just you wait till you see some of the detail in the winning images from this competition this last month. This is the same thing, only with motion. So we are talking about, definitely 1080p as a nice ground floor. But you also need to think about the file size and how difficult it is to manage huge data blocks when you're doing video. So 1080p is a very happy medium. It's unlikely that you're going to do anything that would call for a higher resolution than that. The image quality itself needs to get as much attention as a still photograph does. When you're doing a video, what you are doing is you are collecting a series of still shots that the computer is going to put together into a seamless moving picture in the computer. But in order to get a good motion picture experience, you have to start with good photographs. So you pay attention to being in focus, clear, sharp, well lit, and the focus really needs to be the main concern as you're starting out. If you're new to this, is you have to get very comfortable using the focus ring and hitting the number every time, which is why some kind of a monitor is almost mandatory. It's going to be mandatory for me, I can tell you. Another trick, though, is to use your focus peaking. It's not really a trick. It's that's the reason it's there, is so that you can quickly and effortlessly see what parts of your image are in focus. And as you get used to using the focus ring, you'll learn that with this lens, as you turn the ring to the right or clockwise from where you're standing, that brings the subject in closer. So that's how you bring the subject back to you. As you pull it counterclockwise to the left, the focus is pushed out into infinity. And getting comfortable with where those distances are for your shot is what this is all about. So the perfect clip is going to have everything in focus when you need it. And if you can also use your focus creatively by changing your aperture in such a way that when you are in focus on say you're close up on a particular insect, by blurring out the background by using a very wide open aperture, that can give a wonderful effect. And then as you move the focus back out to the surroundings, you can close the aperture and get more depth of field. A very exciting way to look at nature. That's why nature videos are so popular. So think about all of that stuff. A high quality video is going to have minimal noise. So you're not going to be. That's one of the reasons you can't just shut down the aperture and shoot with no light, because you'll end up with a very noisy video that way. So you want to make sure that you get enough light to the camera, to the sensor, and you also want to avoid distortion and anything that would make for a visually unappealing photograph will also make for unappealing video. Clarity and sharpness, you have to be able to show the details. You don't get a pass on showing the antennae and the compound eyes just because you're shooting video. It's harder to get the key points of interest in focus. Remember, these are macro subjects. I was finding when I was out shooting test footage yesterday that sometimes just to take a breather from the constant focusing on a given subject, I would close down the aperture a little bit and pull back and allow me to get some of the scene with a deeper focus and still get lots of clarity. But when I would zoom back into the subject, I had to be right on it again, because if you can't see sharp detail, the video's not doing anybody any favors. It's got to be stable and smooth, and we've just finished talking about that. Stabilization techniques are really the skill in shooting video. And it's not like in stills where you can jiggle all over the place until it's time to take the shot, and then you can brace yourself against something and take the shot. For video, you've got to be braced the whole time. So getting that mindset is important. Let me see if there are any questions. No, none whatsoever. That's very strange how we used to have a lot of back and forth, and then the questions stopped when I started actually talking about stuff. I don't know if that's a good sign or a bad sign. I'll assume it's a good sign for now. Sound quality. You won't ever please anybody with a good video with bad sound. You're better off with no sound than bad sound. Sound is not easy to record, but it doesn't have to be that terribly difficult either. These microphones, thank you to Robert for donating these to the cause. These are Samson CO2s. They are a stereo pair of very small condenser microphones. Boy, They are so good. They're very light, very compact. The kind of thing you would want to record with outside when you were shooting your video. If you've got a decent microphone and a recorder like the Zoom that I use, record your video and audio separately. That is always a good idea if you want quality audio, because you can then edit it separately. And you can even put in other audio instead. But if it's all on the same tape, you can't. So good sound quality. If you're going to use dialogue, speak more clearly than I do. Yeah, definitely. And if you're going to use music, be careful. You need to keep it under control volume-wise, and be careful what you choose. It's hard to describe. Choosing music for video is as hard as anything else I do. There's just so many ways to offend people and upset people. That's why I like my chap Jules, who does my intro music, because everybody seems to like that. There's not much to hate about it. But anyway, if you're going to use music, be careful. Make sure it fits the scene and helps convey the story that you're interested in telling. The microphone is also good for catching ambient sound. If say you were out doing a dragonfly shoot and you were at a pond and there was running water, you would very significantly increase the atmosphere by having that sound part of the video. So I would certainly go to some trouble to get good sound. Composition and framing is another thing that is as important in video as it is in stills. But again, it's much harder to achieve because of the dynamic nature of the medium. You know, I like to use a lot of negative space, or maybe you don't, but I do. I like to have space. Like I don't know if you can see that owl behind me. It's just one example of how I like to use space. The owl is looking over to his left with an intent stare. I gave him some room to look into, and it implies to you that there's distance there. You've created a space that is consistent with what he's doing. You have to do the same in video. You have to make or take away space and frame your shot to have the maximum effect. And that includes the size of the subject in the frame and where in the frame it is. Getting intimate with a larger insect, getting really close if you want to make people uncomfortable, is a very reasonable thing to do. But if you're photographing, videoing a praying mantis, say, and you know that a lot of people are a bit funny about those, or a spider, big spider, you would probably want to back off a little bit and give the feeling that you have lots of space around that spider before it gets to you. Make your viewer more comfortable. You might not want to do that though, but use the composition and framing to get your point across. Light goes with this completely. When the light drops off in your scene, it accentuates the sense of scope and distance. And you can use light that way by using less light and allowing a more acute, sudden drop-off. You can give that feeling of distance and scope. Using the space and the light and the framing to tell your story is, it's where the magic happens. Lighting and exposure are always going to be spot on in a good video, in a high quality video. It's hard to do, and you have to understand the limitations of auto anything. And certainly, I try to avoid auto anything with video. I set my levels and don't let the camera misinterpret how to shoot a white shirt or a dark wall. Take your time setting that up, and if you have no option, then you can use an auto ISO. Just be aware of the fact that as you're changing apertures, for example, your camera will be fighting against you to keep the lighting level. You know, if you're changing aperture for the purpose of limiting some of the light getting to the sensor, well, the camera's just going to fight back and add ISO to brighten the picture. So anytime you have auto anything on, it's problematic if you're shooting in real time. Okay, editing and post-production are such a unique set of problems in video that I'm going to deal with them totally separately. Probably the last couple of videos of this month, we're going to be talking about this stuff pretty much every time we get together. But knowing how to use a basic video editor, understanding what a non-linear editor is all about, how you place your scenes, how you cut your shots from one to another, even in tiny videos like we're talking about doing here, makes all the difference in the world. If you want to see, if you want to see what bad video looks like, go look at some of my earlier videos. I had no idea what I was doing, and yeah, it's just shocking. Yet, as I have spent countless hours editing and got quite comfortable with the Premiere Pro program that I use, you can do a lot of things that make a video more interesting just by changing the zoom factor or the lighting or the coloration. There's all kinds of things that you can do in post, and I will teach you how to do all of that stuff when we get to that point. Usually in video, what you'll do is you'll pick up a color palette using things called lookup tables. We won't get into that today, but you'll create a mood for your video and you'll stick with it. And especially in a 60-second video, you'll just stick with that mood. But how you grade the color and how you create that whole ambience with light and color is very important, and we'll give it some space to talk about later. Obviously, engaging the viewer by telling a story is one of the hallmarks of interesting quality video. If nobody cares, if nobody is paying any attention to what you're doing because it's not interesting, there's no real point doing it, is there? So the idea is that you want your viewer to feel something. It's a little different than the kind of videos I do, where I want the viewer to learn something or learn how to do something better or differently. It's more educational than entertainment. But in what we're going to be doing for this competition, for example, is you want to grab your viewer and you want to make them go, whoa, what are we watching here? This is interesting. And how you do that that's the genius of making good video, is you come up with an idea and then you use all of your skills to actually create that piece of video. I know that some of you are going to take to this like ducks to water, and I can't wait to see what you come up with. There seems to be a particular personality type that does very well with video. All the concepts around video appeal to some people, and I know that some of you are like that. So I'm very excited to see what you come up with. And during this month, if you have any questions, just get in touch with me, and I'll, if we have enough questions of the same kind, I'll put on a weekend seminar or something, and we can talk about the specific issues that are bothering you. We're talking about learning a complex skill in a short number of days and weeks. So yeah, let's help each other do that. The marriage of the technical proficiency with the artistic talent is the secret sauce, if you will, to good video. The type of video that nature photographers or nature producers like the Attenboroughs of the world bring to us. That's what you're really looking for, is the kind of technically perfect video that is also creatively supercharged. There are not many people can do it that way, but thank goodness there are a few. But one of you may be one of those people. We will see. We will see. Okay, so what I wanted to talk about. Oh no, we're not going to talk about it. Can you believe what time it is? It's 9 o'clock. Well, it's 8:52. My watch is wrong. So I'm gonna move like the wind and tell you about the right targets to shoot for. Okay, presumably your thing's going to be insects. I mean, for most of us it is. You might be shooting plants, in which case plants are probably easier to video because they don't move. But yeah, that's okay. You choose whatever subject you want, but I'm going to assume for just a minute that we're talking primarily about insects for most of us. All right. They are unpredictable. They're everywhere, but nowhere that you want them to be, and they never do what you want them to do. But there are things that you can do that will make them a little bit more accessible and a little bit more predictable. Shooting early in the day, shooting late in the day will oftentimes allow you to get up close and personal with insects that are normally in constant movement. When the temperature cools off, ants, for example, will slow down. They'll keep doing their thing and you can get to them. They're out of the nest, but they're not moving nearly as fast, and they're a lot easier to track with the camera. But the specific groups of bugs that I think you need to look for and concentrate on, butterflies and moths. They fly fairly slowly and a little bit erratically, but they often will settle and then just sit and do their wing thing for ages. And they are a great practice subject. So moths and butterflies, early in the day they're asleep, late in the day they're tired, and you'll often be able to get them on a twig or on a branch. Oftentimes, as you're going to see in the competition video, you can get them what appears to be fast asleep. And that's great. Dragonflies and damselflies. Anything that is hugely territorial, that has a patch of pond that it's feeding on, those things don't go anywhere. They will leave their perch to go eat something while flying and then come back to the same perch, and they'll do that all day long. You can set up your camera right there next to the perch and it will not put them off. They'll come straight back to it. Every bit of good dragonfly footage I've ever shot has been by placing my camera right next to a known perch and just waiting for the thing to come back. So that's a good one. And if you're lucky, they'll come back with something big to eat and you can watch them dismember it because they can't fit it all in their mouths. So that's always a bonus. Caterpillars, slow moving. A lot of them are interesting to look at. Some of them move in funny ways, have great textures, colors. They're good. Ladybugs and beetles, yeah, they just potter along and they're predictable. They're not moving in 3 dimensions. Well, they are, but they're moving along a flat surface usually, so you can go with them. And bigger beetles move slower usually, but earlier in the day, later in the day, definitely. Ants and termites, fast moving, but there are things that you can do. When I go to shoot ants, especially the big ants, the trap jaw ants that I like to photograph, they're so mean looking. If I put some food down, which I'm not supposed to do, just a little bit of something with, what is it they like? Bananas, I think it is, on the ground, they will come and sniff around and they'll stop there at the banana, and you can usually get some great footage. Termites are the same, but I just don't like termites. They're nasty looking pallid things. Grasshoppers and katydids will stay still for extended periods of time, and then of course they'll jump away and you're over. You have to find another one. Yeah, just find them and be slow to approach. 100 millimeters is a good long lens for that kind of subject. Bees are a no-brainer. If you are allergic to bee stings, don't sit in a bush where bees are feeding, because you will irritate one and you'll get stung. And if you die doing that, that would be unnecessary. So yeah, if you're going to do that and it's safe for you to do it, the best thing to do is to just get in amongst them. They'll ignore you completely, and you can have your camera set up and you can shoot them at the minimum focus distance all day long. They are much more interested in nectar than your aftershave. And if you don't use aftershave because you don't shave, they're still more interested in nectar. Yeah, that's what they're all about. Snails and slugs, that would be like insects with training wheels. If you can't keep up with a slug, you need to just go back to using your stills camera, I think, because slugs move. They are boring to watch running. So yeah, that would be for yeah, if it's your very first day out there, you can do a slug or a snail, but otherwise go for something a bit more interesting. The video would be just about as boring as you could get too. So there's that. Approach them carefully, be slow and deliberate and patient. They will come back. Most of the insects that you scare off will come back, even Diptera, long-legged flies, for example. They're territorial, but they'll come back. So think about it, plan it. We're going to be talking next time on Thursday. About half of the time is going to be spent discussing how you plan your video shoot, because it takes organized thought to get everything together, your equipment, what you're going to shoot, how you're going to shoot it, your lighting, the time of day, everything. And I'm going to talk about each component and how you need to go about that to hit the biggest chance of success. I'm going to be out with the Leiwa 100 macro cine this week and taking as much macro footage as I can, and I'm hoping by Thursday to have some good stuff to show you, and we can talk about specific examples of what we've been talking about tonight. Any questions? Let me see. Can decon be used to clean the white dust-like stuff on feathers without destroying the feather? Yes, it can. Decon 90 is good, but I would use it diluted to no more than 5%. But it's a good all-round cleaner at 5%. It's just a powerful detergent with a lot of surfactants in it. Good for feathers. Let me see. Looking forward to all the other entries in this competition. Yeah, me too. I mean, this is... Or are you talking about the last competition? Yeah. You had some good stuff, Russ, in this one. So that is going to be good. Let me see. Question for Allan. For the competition, can the video have cuts, i.e. close up and then cut to a wide or a different angle shot? Absolutely. And I'll tell you what, I will allow you to have a pre and a post scene, if you will. And it can be a written context. You could maybe write a few words about what we're getting ready to see, or you can bookend your video clip with something else. Not an hour of video. It would be some other little snippet that would tell us what you're doing and get closure at the end. So yes, you can do that, and you may have cuts within the video. 60 seconds is an age in video. I mean, you can have 10 different scenes in a 60-second clip. Watch Pulp Fiction and see what I mean. So yes, you can have cuts. You can do anything you want in that 60 seconds, so long as it doesn't violate rules. Can the, let me see, can time-lapse video be submitted to the contest? Well, you know what? It's not really in the spirit of the competition, but I don't see why it shouldn't be. I mean, I've been talking about skills that are, predominantly real-time action footage. But yeah, I think yes, I'll say that stop motion or time lapse are allowed. Yeah, if you can come up with something that ticks all the boxes that's a time lapse, yeah, by all means. Certainly, it would be easy to tell a story with that. Yeah, let's do that, and we'll see what kind of interest there is. Really, it will be very liberal. This is our first dipping the toe into a competition with video. If it's wildly popular, we'll do it again soon. But it's going to be a great month. I am so excited to have Leo on board. I'm also going to be getting out the 25mm video, which has just become something of an albatross for me, because every time I start making the video, I think of other things I want to do with it. So anyway, that's on its way as well now as the holidays are over. So yeah, that's it. Come and join us on Thursday. We are going to be talking about macro video again. And at some point in the near future, I'm going to talk to my friends at Leia and find out when Mr. Lee will be joining us to answer your questions and chat about lenses. So until I see you again on, don't forget Zoom on Saturday. It's going to be a good one. We've got macro video there as well. So Saturday's Zoom, 10 o'clock to 12 noon. If you're a member of Patreon, be there. If you're not a member of Patreon, become a member of Patreon and then be there. 10 o'clock to noon on Saturday. You get me for 2 hours. Anything you want to do except stick pins in me. Okay, that's it. I'll see you guys later. Thank you so much for coming. And Leoa, thank you for dropping by and visiting. I do appreciate everything you do. All the best.